How goes, Barry?
That's okay. How are you?
I had to tell Amazon to turn off that alarm. We had a surprisingly sudden and significant thunderstorm late last night after a stretch of weeks of not having any rain really to speak of. So my internet went down at the other house. So good thing this one's working. I got to go back there and restore that. Just woke up not too long ago.
Hmm.
We had a flicker of power outage. It's always concerning to see whether or not that would actually last. That one actually lasted only half a second. All right. So who we got? And how's your week been, Barry?
It's been pretty routine. Nothing to write home about.
Did you still go to D&D last night?
No, we didn't play last night because too many people are traveling or had other commitments, so we didn't have a game last night. Actually, last night was Saturday night. It's Friday night that we normally play.
Okay. Let me experiment with, try this one today. Hmm. Okay. I get to wake up to this when the weather's clear. It's out the back over there. Yeah, anyway, sorry. I was also on the road yesterday, unable to join because Gail has a medical situation that got a lot more time demanding
Oh,
starting Thursday. So she's
oh,
trying to figure out what to do about that one.
yeah. Well, it was just Josh and me. We went for about an hour and 50 minutes about.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the link. I still haven't downloaded. I'll do that today so you can free up your space again.
Right.
In fact, let me see if I can find it right now and start it, bringing it down. Hey, Josh.
Hello. Good to see you, Sam. Hello, Barry. Good to see you.
Hi, Josh.
Okay. Anything you guys want to recap from yesterday?
Uh, I don't. I just woke up, so I don't remember yesterday. To be honest, give me a second, and I'll remember it. Maybe
It was
Barry.
most it was mostly Iowa,
Yeah,
Iowa,
Iowa was there.
Iowa in Josh's lap, not
Ah,
Iowa, Iowa.
Yeah, we were just waiting for you to come back, Sam. We were having. It was a nice conversation. I don't remember what we were talking about, but I remember it was very pleasant.
well, I just was telling Barry that on Thursday, Gail had a medical
Hi,
situation that
Eric.
all of a sudden ramped up in terms of time demanded. So
Hmm.
I was trying to help her out with that one.
You doing okay? We'll
It's
find
an
out.
adjustment. Yeah, it's an adjustment that just I could talk for hours about the healthcare system here in the US and what it makes people go through. I can really rant about
If
that.
you want to talk with Cusella, she'll talk to you for hours about that too, because that's her job.
Really? Does she have
It's
influence in policy or adjustments to possibly be
um
made?
she's trying to have as much influence as possible, but yeah, that's her job to she talks to all the nurses in her union. So there's 30,000.
I
So
would
they're
enjoy
trying
that.
to
If she's up for it, if you're serious about this, I would enjoy that at some point. And
um I'm I'm serious, that's all she does. I don't know if she wants to do it off work hours, but I'm saying that is definitely the reason she went into Chinese medicine. I mean, that's that's what she does. That's
yeah,
you listen to all those stories from the nurses, you want to cry.
yeah.
And her mom's a nurse, her sister's a nurse. She's not a nurse, but she's been in that world for almost 20 years.
It expands into a lot of different issues, not just the actual care for healthcare, but all the logistics and administration and laws and regulations around it as well.
Yeah,
And that is a source of much, let's say, there's many opportunities for improvement there. Let's put it that way.
I get frustrated when I go to the hospital and some of the systems are not just antiquated, but they're almost maliciously enacted in a way that is profit driven. And
Absolutely. That is,
it's hard to watch.
and by the way, I years ago thought, oh, bad, it can't be that bad. But now, having seen it and what Gail has to go through, it is worse than I imagined by magnitudes. Just the
Yeah.
callousness with which they treat the patients and the profit motive, as you say, and the lack of, concern about what some of their decisions do to the quality of life of some of their patients.
Yeah.
It's just
And,
sad.
and at the same time, there's really good people in there trying to do their best. And it's a love-hate relationship for me because I don't like Western medicine. I've never been I've just I've had horrible experiences with Western medicine. So I don't like it. But I appreciate if it's needed to save someone's life. Like it saved my dad had a heart attack, they saved his life. My other stepdad had a heart attack, they saved his life. And yeah, there's been times, my mom had cancer, my sister just had cancer. She's just spent the whole year in the system. And I thought she got a lot of unnecessary radiation that she didn't need, but that was her choice because she didn't want it to come back. So, and she's healing up and hopefully, had her breast removed and all that stuff.
Hmm.
But it's a very hard, as a systems thinker, it's a very hard system to tackle because it gets into the middleman, which is the insurance companies, and they're the ones that run the show.
Man, they're so, yeah. I mean, look, sorry to waylay this for 5 minutes, but man, it is immediate right now in her life and my life. And so I could go on and on for hours. And sorry, I've already taken up 6 minutes of this, but we can move on now. But if Kusela is willing, I would be very curious to have that conversation.
Yeah, maybe we could arrange. I have a group that I meet with. It's like a wellness tech, medical tech group. They're from all around the world. Maybe we could have a conversation all together. And a lot of it is just dumping the energy that you experience when you went through the system. So it could be a little cathartic too. So we'll set
Okay.
up a meeting like that later.
Does that meet at a regular time?
It's on Mondays. It's on Clubhouse.
Okay.
So
Clubhouse has no video, right?
no video, just audio.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
let
new
me
one is
know.
Chatter with video.
Are there patient support groups that can help Gail? People who have a similar condition?
You would think so, but in this particular case, they're not very effective.
Mm,
Um,
okay.
I don't know how much I want to say on the record
You
because
don't have to. I was
if
just
we make
curious.
this private, I would be willing to share everything. But uh, in concern for her privacy, I don't want to say too much, on the record.
Okay, thank
But
you.
yeah, I mean, you would think advocacy groups would be effective, but in this particular case, or at least this particular one, and she's tried many over many years, they have not been effective. In fact, that's one of the problems is there's really no advocacy for these kinds of patients. Okay, on to cheerier topics then. What's on people's minds? TCM, Ayurveda,
Yeah, I read some books by
monkeypox.
Deepak Chopra a while ago about Ayurveda, so that got me interested in it. And I tried it for a while. I couldn't maintain it, but and I didn't really have the education of how the Indians do it, but it was good to learn.
Did you find your dosha, Eric?
I think I'm a kapha.
Yeah, that's probably right. I don't,
I don't know much about Ayurveda.
It's the Indian method of healing and health maintenance over
Oh,
5,000 years old.
yeah. I've
It's
heard
similar to
some.
Chinese medicine.
There's one report I came across that said there was a surprising amount of lead in some of their medications, but that was a very limited exposure I had to a random snippet of a documentary. So I'm not even sure how confident that data point is.
Yeah, I didn't go into any of the medications that they have, but I just learned like the just like the lifestyle things and some things like raga music at different times of the day. I tried that. It's cool.
For 3 hours at a time?
No, got a CD, had a good raga sitar player. Yeah.
If you join the Hare Krishnas, let me know. I will join with you. I'll come onto that cult with you.
So is this what the Beatles did back in the day? uh,
Something. There's a lot of Maharishis out there.
yeah. So I didn't go that far. I just did it for my personal enlightenment or whatever.
Now, in your exposure to it, did
Mhm.
it have positive benefit to your health?
It felt good as I was doing it and following their suggestions. I mean, I got some structure to my morning routine and it was working for me. I mean, I just took to heart some of the things that I learned from Deepak Chopra, and it's been good. I just couldn't keep up the pattern. I guess raised in American culture, like we'll try things and then discard them, and so it's like our mind has to take control back from anything.
So you don't still do that?
It's still in my memory, but it's not a practice. And various other things I've explored, I tried, and yeah, the memories are there. If I ever want to try it again, I can. But yeah, it's like trying to fit ancient wisdom into life in America. Yeah.
I can relate to that, Eric, very
Mhm.
much. I tried to be a Buddhist, and if I was in Burma or somewhere, or in a country like Thailand, I think I could
Mhm.
do it.
Yep.
In America, I couldn't do it. Yep, I even shaved my head and everything. I
Mm.
shaved it all off.
Curious why? Why not in the
Why
US?
did I think it's because there's just so many people that have these ideas of what it is and why you are acting the way you're acting, and there's not a respect for it. So it's like when you say say you're sitting with a bunch of people and you go, you know what, I'll just have lemon water, and everyone's having brunch, and they go, you're a fucking weirdo. Like, why is that guy here? He creeps me out. What are those beads on his neck? I don't like that guy. He's weird. And he keeps talking about like being a good person. Yeah, I think what's his agenda? Like, who is he? Like, I don't like him. Let's not invite him to brunch next week. So that was my experience, but I was in my 20s. So I was in my late 20s.
Hmm.
And then all the Buddhists want to talk about quantum physics. So when I hang out with the Buddhist people in America, they just want to sit and talk quantum physics all day. And it got a little heady. And I don't think that's what the Buddha was trying to talk about was, quarks and atoms and spin electrons and stuff like that. So it was just not easy in America. I couldn't find the right community, bottom line.
And Deepak Chopra tried to bring a little bit of the science in as well, but his interpretation of quantum healing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I read all of Deepak Chopra's stuff, and I found that he just took the Bhagavad Gita and changed the words to wizards and warlocks. And I got a
Okay.
little perturbed. I actually went to his house in Black Hawk outside of San Francisco, and it was this most lavish house I'd ever seen. It had fountains and blah blah blah, and it was like at this country club. And I was like, this isn't a Buddhist. This isn't a spiritual man. Like, who is like? I was just Buddhism in America just didn't work for me. If that makes sense.
Right. But why did his stuff sell? Like, what is it about the Americans? We're desiring something that we will go for
It was
that.
that Harry Potter story before Harry Potter came out,
Hmm.
and the magic of it all, and the majesty of witches and warlocks, and the idea of supernatural and the paranormal and all these beautiful things of, Shiva and Krishna and Vishnu. And, but he changed the words a little bit to make it palatable for American culture. And it
Right.
works.
But I think there was also something about his tone of voice. Like if you listened enough to him, and he was on PBS and whatever, there's a sense you could trust. So people got a sense of trust just from his voice and his way he delivered whatever he was
Yep.
saying. And
If you
then,
imagine my face right now, if I put my PTR or my picture as an Indian man.
right,
So imagine it's not me, and
right.
I say, but if you look deep inside, you will find the things that you're searching for. But you don't have to search for it. You already have it. So now that you know that, you can go to the place you want to be. So if it wasn't me and I was talking like
Exactly.
that, it's like, oh wow, interesting. I can be there already. Oh wow.
And there's something psychological the way we're listening to that. Yeah, how we feel
It
that
sounds
that
like
meets.
thousands of years of wisdom are coming at you right now, and you can just soak it in.
And we want to
Think about
soak things. Yeah. We don't want to do work. We just want to soak it up from the TV and whatever, YouTube.
That's Yep.
You go ahead, Sam.
I could remember wrongly, but I don't think the Bhagavad Gita is a work of Buddhism. It's a work,
No, it's not.
yeah.
No, it's Hindu. I'm saying that was Deepak Chopra, but when you're in the Buddhist community in America, there isn't a lot of Buddha. Like I did meet some high up Rinpoches in the Tibetan Buddhist culture, and I would hang out with them all the time, but they didn't speak English. So it wasn't like we could sit and have deep conversations in English. They only knew a few words of English. So a
Did
lot
you
of it is just being present and not talking about things. And that was where I found my Buddhism, was just hanging out with these people and just being. Like I wasn't doing anything. I was just feeling happy and feeling joyous and soaking in their energy of them just studying scripture. And
did you hear
it,
the story that the Dalai Lama, he was sorry that he wrote that book about happiness? It was like Americans just they read the book and then they just tried to like dissect the book and like do it their own way, like make a project plan for how are you going to be happy from this book, And he said that's wrong. He was sorry he ever published it.
oh, I never heard that.
Yeah, I forget where I heard that, but interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, they to make a long story short, Sam, all of the people around me said you have to go to a place called the Vedanta Temple, and it's a society in California, and they have a beautiful temple in Santa Barbara where on one side is Jesus, like a young picture of Jesus painting. There's the Buddha, the young Buddha on the other side. In the middle is Sri Ramakrishna, and they would have people come and talk about the Vedas and Vedic scripture. And so that was as close to any Buddhist community I got to.
It works for people who are brought up with it as kids. They'll have some foundation of spirituality, whatever it is for
Yeah.
their lives. But trying to come to it after as an adult, I mean, yeah, trying to go against what you were brought up as, try something else. I mean, you can see what the 60s was like.
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually brought up with it as a child with those
Cool.
kind of Indian beliefs.
Mhm.
To me, that feels like what's happened with Taoism, what's happened with Confucianism, what's happened with a lot of these different schools of thought. There's a lot of unnecessary, arcane structure around this, but the core, the simplicity of the core seems lost. And Buddhism at its core, to me, maybe I don't understand it, is much simpler than that. It doesn't require worship. It doesn't require temples. It doesn't require groups. It doesn't require, all of this practice. that seems to be imposed on what's modern day Buddhism now, to me.
I found it
Well, I found
interesting.
it at, yeah, it was at odds with capitalism. And that's what I tried to do in my 20s was, can you be a great capitalist and a great Buddhist? And I could never merge the two.
Ask, is Elon a Buddhist? Is
I don't think he is. No. Or
but
maybe, I don't know.
however, Jobs claimed to be. And that's where I
Mm.
see him being not very well aligned himself.
Well, he
And
went to India before he started Apple, and I don't know what happened there. His friend was it Daniel Kotke? I forget who
Kotke,
took him.
Kottke.
Yeah, was he the one who we went with?
I don't have a
Different.
citation, but
Yeah, okay. But you
Well,
see,
I
he
think,
was searching for something before he went into business.
but the way he
Something
treated some
before.
of his close colleagues and close
Oh
employees,
yeah,
just
that's
are completely
yeah,
counter to what he would have done had he really embraced those principles of Buddhism.
right.
I think his Buddhist design and his love for simplicity, his Zen love of his design mind, if you will, his UI structure, his way of organizing the world was very Buddhist, was very, less is more kind of idea.
It could be consistent with, but it isn't necessarily rooted or sourced from that. He also had a background in font design and layout of
Mhm.
pages. So he had the aesthetic sense, arguably even before he got into Buddhism.
Yeah, he was very Helvetica and not enough Times Roman.
Times Roman was the very first font that came out on the Macintosh. Come on. That's what
I
everything was
said
defaulted to.
he was ended up to be Helvetica and left his Times Roman roots. I'm just saying, in terms of graphic design, it's more straight edges with less curves.
Yeah. If you're really motivated towards simplicity, you might say you'd want to just abandon, serifs.
Yeah. I mean, what font are you, Sam?
All over the place. I used to be using one that people hated. I used to like Comic Sans.
Me too.
I think we're all Comic Sans now.
Or Zap Dingbats.
Yeah.
I would switch to Comic Sans when I was trying to be cute so people would know that I wasn't being serious.
I'm with you on that one, Barry.
I think seriousness is taking oneself a bit too far.
Yeah, well, just to bring in something that blew my mind last night, I saw a thing called Sanka.ai, which was a company out of Japan that is trying to make AI agents write science papers, but not just write the science paper, create hypotheses and solve those problems. So it's a generative AI for science that's supposed to do science work. And I thought that was an interesting idea. I don't know if they can execute it. I haven't looked deeper into what they're doing at this moment, but I think that concept of having AIs write actual interesting science papers is going to be something I'm going to keep my eye on because I think if they can figure out a way to actually have an AI do science, that would accelerate the science world by leaps and bounds.
And then you have another AI that does the peer review and says, "Oh
That's what they
yeah."
said. Yeah. Yeah. No, they have that. They
Panel of
do
them.
for real.
Oh God.
That's exactly it. The other AI does the peer review.
So it publishes and gets compete with all the other scientists.
Or the other models. So it's like model
Yeah.
versus model. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know if you guys have seen Sanka AI.
No.
or Sankey. Let me make sure I'm saying it right. It could be Sankey with an I.
Sabrina Ossenfelder talked a little bit about AI and large language models, and she pointed out that there's at least one college professor who is requiring his students to use large language models to write their briefs. I think it was in the law or some other discipline. But he said, you might as well learn to use it now because you're going to be writing a lot of briefs and you need to write them, so they're readable.
Yeah, I
So,
guess it's a lot of boilerplate text that it copies in.
yeah. Sakana.di.
Actually AI, sorry, it
Oh.
copied it wrong off of the thing. It's sakana.ai. Let me write it right. I cut and paste.
Sank is a defunct brand of instant coffee.
My
I'm
parents used to drink
dyslexic.
it. Yeah.
I couldn't pronounce it.
Sakana.
Sakana. Yeah. It sucks being dyslexic because I saw Sanka in my mind. I saw Sanka like the coffee. Sakana. It's a Japanese institution. It could actually, I could see that happening where these companies spend billions of dollars spinning up these language models to do just one thing, one aspect of the scientific process, and then they go against the other company, and we watch these AIs. Oh, what are you putting up, Sam? We can see.
I just said I just got back from getting coffee here.
Oh,
Okay.
nice. So do you guys see that people are spinning up these very specific AIs that do a very specific training and
Yes.
Yeah, even smaller models, trying
Yeah.
to get use out of the small models.
and then it's going to be like we'll be watching from the sidelines going, nah, yours is terrible. Well, I heard that the other one did this, so let's see. And then it'll be the humans watching what the AIs do to see if they're getting it right, like a TV show, and arguing about who trained whose model with what parameters and why that one sucks. And then we'll be arguing, no, this one's the best one. It should run our country. And then the other people like, did you see what? Yeah. Go
So
ahead, Sam.
reality TV then gets supplanted by artificial TV.
Yep. Singularity TV.
I
Arguably,
feel like
that would be more interesting.
YouTube's already going the way of AI, and think the quality is degrading.
It is to a large extent, but then the small stuff that no one's looking at, there's some really high quality stuff that's on the fringes of YouTube.
Yeah, the individual people who are doing the work. Yeah.
The ones that won't get published by anywhere else because it's too good. It's like really good material, but no one wants to publish it because they want to own the rights to it, like a Netflix or HBO Max or something.
Yep.
And they're
So
sidestepping. Yeah.
The video I posted in the chat, it's Dr. Mobeen Syed, and he does drawings of disease pathways. So you could learn whatever you need about a specific disease just by watching his videos. So the one I posted is his analysis of this whole monkeypox worldwide emergency. And he's saying it's confined to Africa for now. And if you're not visiting or traveling to those 4 countries, don't worry about it yet. So it gives you a little bit of sense making, whereas other sensational headlines have an agenda.
What's his name?
Mobeen Syed, Mobeen. Yeah, Dr. Bean he's called. So let me just add it.
Oh, I found it. Mobeen Syed. Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Dr. Bean.
Yep. And he does have a large language model that goes against his articles, and so it's some chat GPT thing he did. So just search his site and you'll get medical info.
Has anyone used the new Grok that came out? Is anyone paying for X?
Pay for it.
Supposedly they added Flux. The people that started Stability AI created a new one called Flux, and they're using that with the Grok model to make pictures, but it's unfettered, meaning if you go to Chat GPT and use DALL-E and say, I tried this yesterday, make a picture of Jesus and the devil playing poker, it'll say, no, we can't do that. That's too controversial. Like make a picture of Netanyahu eating a sandwich. No, we can't do that. But the Grok AI with Flux will do that. It'll make anything you want. It'll make Mickey Mouse like on a beat. Like it'll do anything but nudity. It won't do nudity. Other than that, it'll do any picture. Which is interesting, these parameters that these guardrails that they're putting on these tools. I think that's a big conversation that is not being had about what information will be guardrailed and lost. And it's going to be the biggest book burning we've ever seen in the history of humanity.
I heard that it generated these mass crowds at the Harris gatherings.
It looked like an AI, that picture that I saw.
No, these are Trump's accusations, as you know.
No, but there were probably a huge crowd there, but someone leaked an AI picture of a crowd that was going around that was obviously not real. So even if there is a real huge crowd, once the AI picture gets out there, then it's just that cycle of fake news and just lying and manipulating.
There was a live video clip showing real people, and you saw a mass of people moving, and it looked awfully real to have been. You could make an AI based on it. That would be a single frame. I don't think an AI could have made that movie with that many people in motion.
It could, but it didn't because it actually happened.
Right.
But if
exactly.
I made an AI video of it, then you would think that, in other words, that idea that reality is going to be questionable, here we are. I mean, that's a perfect example of, a political adversary using AI to say it was fake, even though it wasn't.
Yeah. Facebook keeps feeding me these cheesecake photos of female celebrities, and a lot of them look like they're not real photos, that they're AI.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you guys saw the Jensen Wong's latest, I think it was at either SIGGRAPH or the one before that, where he showed the AI creating, it was so realistic, there was sweat coming down the avatar's face. And it was the pores were perfect. It was the most perfect AI of a human I've ever seen. I couldn't tell. It was better than reality. I mean, the quality that he produced for that one demo was so good. If that's the standard in 3 years, there's no way we're going to be able to tell the difference, like ever.
Which raises a question that I was pondering just briefly last couple of weeks, which is if we want to beat this spoofing, this falsification, this misinformation, to me, it seems like you require some sort of hardware assist in cameras. And that this hardware might also need some integration with GPSs and clocks. If you had that, if you could actually, do a eventual transparency version of location and time, signed by the GPS and by the camera, maybe that's enough to counter all of this spoofing. So I was thinking, is that sufficient, or is that too much? It doesn't need to be that complicated, or is that even enough? I'd like to, really see what you guys think about that one, because to me, that seems necessary. Over.
Well,
I think that's a
watermarking.
great idea. Yeah, go ahead, Barry.
I was going to say that watermarking is one technique on both sides. You could require watermarks on AI stuff, and also have watermarks on real photos. And then that's like a fingerprint. If you fake a fingerprint, well, that's fraud. So you can make it a crime. Don't stop it, but it will limit the number of people who think they can get away with it.
The big thing is who owns those certificates that you're going to use to stamp these pictures as official, and how do you authenticate it? Like if you had the chain, of transmission, the whole provenance of where it's been, who got it from you, and
Right.
But that's a
yeah,
known problem with a known solution, albeit
yeah,
perfect, right? So it
right,
requires diligence in enforcement, but
yeah,
at least it mostly works today. We
yeah. If those
mostly have a working
signatures.
economy.
Mhm.
Well, who's going to be the international standards regulatory board for AI?
Something similar
And
to
what?
ICANN.
Yeah,
ICANN
Yeah,
could be it.
I remember
something. But
when
then, oh, go ahead.
Remember when the laser printers were using dots that you couldn't see? Well, it's the same kind of thing. How are you gonna have that technology implemented
Yep.
behind the radar?
Yep.
Yeah. So you could prove this lawyer copied this paper. It's not an original or whatever. So same thing, images, it's all digital signatures and trees of proof.
That's why these persistent ledgers, non-spoofable ledgers, seem
Mhm.
to be the way. Although we got to figure out, how to make it not quite so expensive.
Yeah.
Yep.
But is that necessary? Could we do something simpler to prevent spoofing? Or does that seem
Well,
necessary? This is where my head went, and I don't know what you guys are
Well,
making.
if you wanted to look at the decentralized web, things like Merkle trees could be used. But how do you track the whole movement and provenance, keep
But
that
let's go back a little
signature?
bit. Do you believe that something in the nature of camera hardware and GPSs and clocks are necessary, or is there another way to do it that's completely independent of hardware? To me, I don't see it.
Unless you have provenance? Yeah.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this since 2006. Think what you have to do. I mean, you could try your best to regulate it, but eventually someone will corrupt it. So the idea that humanity will split off into people that believe the false stuff and people that believe the real stuff is sort of what has happened now. Is there's different narratives of what reality is, and if you're on the side that this is real or the side that this is fake, and it has, in other words, society has to fraction off and fight itself until it comes to some sort of agreement.
I actually think it may not require violence. I'm actually all in favor of science deniers, truth deniers, fact deniers, vaccine deniers. Let's give them their own nation. Let's let them set up their own form of government, their own education system, their own system of commerce, their own system of healthcare, and let's see how far they get. In the meantime, those who believe in science and truth and social values in healthcare, et cetera, we just deal with ourselves, and they can just take care of themselves. And 5, 10, 20 years from now, I think I know what I can see. And I would love to see that experiment.
How do you keep those two groups from fighting? That's my question.
Give them Texas and Florida and whatever they want in between, and just put them all there, and we'll just set up the rest of the country the way we want it.
You're talking about a GitHub fork. So you fork off, they fork their way, we fork our way.
That's right. No, I mean, they're not going to take our starting point GitHub, because they don't believe in that as a starting point. They believe in some Bible, or they believe in some blowhard named Trump, or they believe in some Project 2025, bullshit. Let them start from there. They're not going to necessarily take what we think is quote unquote a good starting point. They're welcome to, but I don't think they will.
But that sounds very like Hitler-esque, if you will, because you'd have to separate those people and put them in a database and move them.
We're giving them their freedom of choice. They want a country that behaves the way they believe. They got it. Give it to them.
But wait, so you're saying like basically divide, let's just start with America, divide America into separate states and separate nations. Like I've had this idea a long time. So you've got basically California, Arizona, Texas, that whole area. Then you got to take all the people. The hard part is taking all the people in that area and moving them out of that area, and vice versa. Taking all the people from Alabama and Florida and moving them over. It's too much movement, is what I'm saying. I don't think
Can
you
it
can
be
move that
done
many people.
virtually?
virtually, right? And then if it's done virtually, then you get the chip identification. So if you're in line, then it becomes this
Right.
fighting situation where it's like blacks only can drink from this water fountain and whites only. It would be this nation water fountain and that nation water fountain, and
Now, how
it would
about
really be yeah.
everybody gets an Apple Vision Pro with their version of
Oh
reality?
Jesus.
I'm just
Like in
saying,
South
well,
America, you'd have two countries, Bolivia on one side and Oblivia on the other side.
But that's really where we're heading. I mean, we're laughing, but this is real. This is happening in real time right now.
I think we'd only need to do that experiment maybe a couple decades, and we would see the results. And sure, if they want to believe in that currency versus this currency, okay, so let's call it Trump coins versus dollars, then they have to buy everything in Trump coins with trump.amazon.com or its version of whatever it is, and because that's what they believe. Okay, they may not even be able to get that to work because maybe they don't believe in science, so they don't believe in airplanes, so they don't believe in fuel, they don't believe in ICE engines. Who knows?
So what are you losing by splitting the country? Like the federal government, whatever it was formed to take care of, like the defense. So you'd have to
No,
have separate defense.
they get their own defense. They get to do whatever they want. They get to maintain their own tanks. They get to build their own fuel supply systems. They get to maintain their own weapons and ammo, and they have to take care of themselves.
Okay, so you're also talking like a separate Bill of Rights. Just
They
divide the
don't believe in a Bill of
Constitution.
Rights. They don't believe in 1A. They certainly believe in 2A. But
No, but what you're saying is, yeah, you're taking the original founding of the country and dividing it. So you take this, I'll take this, and all the principles of
no,
why is the
look,
like why did
they
the
don't
country?
even believe in a constitutional government. Why would they take the Constitution?
Okay, let's go back to the Civil War. Why did Lincoln insist the country must stay together? What was the reasoning? Why couldn't we have let South Carolina go its own way? Why did he have to keep the country united?
That's a good question. I can't
Yeah.
answer.
They broke up the USSR, didn't they?
What? This is 1860s Civil
Yeah.
War, and it could have ended where okay, the South went. We could have divided North and South.
Oh, yeah. Mason-Dixon line could have.
But why did Lincoln insist a house divided against itself cannot stand?
Yeah, I think that's the main problem is that the two sects will end up fighting each other. They won't coexist peaceably, though. They'll be trying to steal each other's resources.
Yeah, it becomes the Hatfields and the McCoys very quick.
But it could be, as most things are, economics, right? At the time, cotton was the source of wealth. And what made that possible was slavery. So you had to have these cotton farms. You had to have slaves to pick the cotton, and the cotton uh, millionaires turned out to be the most successful members of society. It could be
So
that simple.
today,
I'm not saying it is, but it could be that simple.
you can make the same argument today. The iPad is the most valuable thing we have, and that requires China sacrificing slave labor and child
Well,
labor.
China would have to choose who they do business with, which one of those
Mhm.
countries,
Yep.
because they can't do business with both.
And who would they trust to pay the bills?
Exactly. I'm saying I think Abraham Lincoln had it right as a house divided will fall. And if you divide, you're losing a certain amount of resources when you divide up. Even idiot people help to clean the garbage in the streets. And I'm just saying, you need everybody. A society needs all layers of it's it's easy to just dismiss someone for their beliefs, but it's harder to use those people for a practical system that works for everybody.
DEI.
Yeah.
I think in the end, that's probably true. In the meantime, you can run various experiments. Social experiments are
But Isn't that's what's going on right now? Isn't there experiments with, to me, what I see going on is the federal government is trying to have all the power, but pretending there's people in the government that say, oh no, that's a state problem. That's not a federal problem. So they're put in other, who was the famous president that said the buck stops here? Was that Truman?
Truman,
Who was
Truman, Truman.
Truman? That that is what I don't see happening is someone saying, okay, you guys are trying to push off everything onto everybody else, but someone has to take responsibility for everyone.
Too many pronouns there. I can't really parse that.
Oh, sorry. Um, if the federal government isn't handling the problem, then they push it off to the state government. And then when the state government tries to handle it, the federal government says, no, that's not how we want it done. We're going to come in and tell you what you can do. So,
I
Okay.
think one of the issues you have to deal with is that empathy gets replaced by antipathy when you have schisms. In schisms, you lose empathy and you acquire antipathy in lieu of empathy, which is not healthy.
I think we have a severe lack of understanding of constitutional foundations of this country.
Oh,
There
yeah.
were only 17 items that were delegated to the federal government.
Yes, it was intended to limit the
Right.
scope of federal government. Everything else was up to the people in the states. Okay.
Right.
And over time, that has gotten corrupted. Yes.
And then why were all the amendments added? Well, we screwed up here and there. We'll fix it. Yeah.
Well, the first 10 were supposedly part of the first set of articles.
Well, to get it ratified,
11
they
through,
insist-
etc. Yeah. 11 through, etc. were part of the amendment process, which was designed in from the start.
Right.
Can't get a bunch
when's
of
the last time we've called a constitutional Congress?
We only did it once.
There are
Is that,
groups trying to do that, convention of states groups, but I don't like the idea because it'll just run away again. Everybody will bring their favorite thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's messy. It's a messy thing that no one ever wanted to do. So it's been pushed off for so long that now it's impossible to do.
and it's a
well,
very high bar you got to cross before you actually make any change.
yep.
Yeah. And I think to me, the biggest thing is it's easy to put laws on to the record. It's harder to take those laws off the record. And that takes a lot of time. It's good. It might take another 150 years to ratify some of these problems. And if we don't start now, it'll take 200 years. And if we don't start now, there will be no 200 years because it's not gonna work.
We may not ever have another election. Yes.
I'll start teaching your daughter so she could be the next president when she grows up.
And you start buying, tickets elsewhere.
I don't think a president is what's needed. I think a form of communication that takes out the corruption is what's needed. And from what I've seen just in the last 30 years, is if you can make a corporation powerful enough, you can manipulate the laws to make your, I call it a country. It's not even a corporation anymore. It's a country. I mean, we're talking 400,000 people that work for some of these large corporations. That's a big country. 400,000 people. That's a lot. That's a lot of people.
Do you guys recall a movie called Rollerball? 50, 60
I've
years
heard
ago?
of it.
Rollerball was the first movie I'm aware of that basically postulated that eventually it was going to be a bunch of corporations running the country, not any other, recognizable branches of government. And now these companies are what set up these sports teams. The game is called Rollerball, and company played versus company, just like in the Olympics you have countries versus countries, but in this movie it was company versus company. And who was it? Somebody really famous, James Caan. You guys remember him from
Mhm.
the mafia movie? What was that? The Corleones.
Godfather.
Right. James Caan from The Godfather. He was the lead guy in Rollerball.
I remember. Well, they rebooted that called The Hunger Games. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is with the teens fighting each other so that their various different segments of society could get food. That one?
That's yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's the teams are the corporations, and the corporations have fractioned off society into levels
Yeah.
and
Anyway,
districts.
rollerball was 60, 70 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe 70, maybe 60. Yeah.
That
Well,
Katniss Everdeen was at the lead in.
That's the Hunger Games. Yeah.
yeah. Well, are corporations going to be allowed to become nation states? That's the question. And
It's
has that
already
already happened?
happening. Come on. If
Yeah.
you've got Citizens United, which allows
Yep.
money into politics, essentially a game over. Okay. There it is.
Right.
We have to
That's
repeal
it.
it or we've lost all influence and companies have it all.
That's what we were fighting for in the Occupy movement, was not to let Citizens United get voted in. That was the fight. That's what we were chanting in the streets.
Well, it's going to be hard to repeal Citizens United. It's so against the democratic principles. I cannot even believe it got considered.
Can we create a decentralized government? Is that possible?
Sure, I think so. We already
Yeah.
have, virtual organizations online, functioning properly.
Yeah, the thing is, how to make that catch on and scale? Like it could work in maybe a city, but beyond that level, a whole state, there's probably be a problem unless you have them pooled together and I don't know how.
What
Have
does
leadership.
governance look like when everything is automated? What is governance at that point? Is that the operating system? Is that the software? Like, what is governance when
I'd say
everything
it's
is
the
automated?
rules that it follows. It's the software that it follows, like the Ethereum, these smart contracts, essentially. If you're letting software run everything, who's going to
Mhm.
agree that this is the code we're going to live by? That, yeah. Go
I
ahead,
think
Sam.
it's probably not very well known these days, but Singapore, as far as I recall, was the very first country that allowed online applications for business licenses.
Mhm.
At that time, I think it was the mid 90s, not very long after the internet actually got formed.
Mhm.
And in that time period, you could actually apply for a business license in Singapore and have it approved or denied within 15 minutes.
Nice.
Whereas the same time frame in the United States took weeks because we did not do that online for many years past that date.
Yeah, I had to go down to an office and paperwork and all that. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
So
so, oh, go ahead.
you get small countries who actually can act in a more agile way, but also with decision making processes that are not quite so uh, like sludging through concrete.
Well, transparency is the key. If people have the ability to audit that government system and make sure it's behaving the way we expect it to,
Yep.
and that deficiencies get corrected.
Yep. And you believe that basically people are not out trying to game the system; they're actually trying to do the right thing. And you got a well-educated population, and they can survive without resorting to crime. If people can't survive, and you define various different amelioration mechanisms as criminal, then you're going to just create a whole class of criminals.
You give the criminals games to fight against each other, get that
Oh,
aggression out.
I actually just spoke to a criminal yesterday who just got out of jail after 4 years because he was selling cocaine and tried to defend his cocaine with his weapons. And he got put in jail for 4 years, young kid. And he's 4 months out of prison and he seemed to be, in a good headspace. I have no idea. I just met him yesterday. But the idea that education, when you do something wrong, you made your mistake, you served your time, how you reform your criminals, I think is one of the most important things we need to talk about in terms of creating a society that we can all live in. because we're gonna commit crimes, but how do we pay for those and become productive parts of society again? Is there a process of making mistakes that you can go through in a journey that at the end you can come out okay?
We have to send them to Elon Musk and have his brain reprogrammed. That's going to come to
No.
that. I'm sure science fiction has thought of that.
Called rehabilitation.
I guess
Yeah,
what I'm saying,
okay.
it struck me this person seemed to have a path out of the prison complex because he was smart enough to buy some property before he went to prison, and he had some money when he came out.
Okay.
But I don't see that very often with people that get sentenced to jail time, that they don't have a path when they come out. So what
Well,
I'm saying is, do
it's a
we have a
structural thing.
path? Yeah, if we're gonna, get pushed, I feel sometimes they push society into crime because the system is no longer working for certain people. And when you look at like San Francisco, it's easier to smash and grab and sell things on the street than it is to go work a job that they don't see a path forward.
You know the single greatest cause of crime? Passing criminal legislation.
Laws.
Washington, D.C. is the most criminal organization.
I
But
guess what
then
I'm
there's
saying is, could we all thrive in a way that we all see a path to not have to resort to crime?
let people survive without resorting to crime.
Yeah.
Animals do it.
Who does it?
Animals.
Hmm.
We're the only species that has the concept of criminal law and crime and punishment regulatory mechanism.
Hmm.
Animals also eat each other.
Well,
Yep.
they
Ostracize certain members of their tribe, quote unquote.
yeah.
I'm saying I've watched squirrels and squirrel communities, and if there's one squirrel going in and taking the nuts from the other squirrel, that squirrel's not going to be around.
Oh,
They
really?
don't.
Yeah.
That's middle
The
school for
human equivalent,
squirrels, right?
the human equivalent would be all the other squirrels gather around that one and worship him because, oh wow, he's the richest squirrel.
In human stuff, but not in squirrel world.
I know. I'm
No,
trying
but
to
you're
make a
right.
bad joke.
No, that's a good
But
point though.
timing's
Is
horrible.
that they love the criminal squirrel in the human world.
Yep.
They're clever. They stole the nuts and no one noticed. And
Yeah.
but if you watch you've seen squirrels fight and run up the trees and stuff like that and try to attack each other. It's because they're taking each other's resources or encroaching on their territory. I think to me the biggest problem to solve is, do we have enough resources for 8 billion people? And if we agree yes, can we divvy it out in a way that everybody gets a share? And if we say no, how do we get rid of some of those people? And let's make a decision of how many people. Someone's got to decide how many people can actually live on this earth, and in what system can they live in not necessarily harmony, but in a way that we don't have an existential crisis every week.
Yeah.
that that yeah.
So I think number one, something like UBI, which lets everybody survive without fear of tomorrow. Okay. Number one. Number two, basically a range. It could be horrible to begin with, but at least a fixed range between what people making the common wage versus people at the top. Call it 100 to 1, 1,000 to 1, 10,000 to 1, whatever it is to start with. Okay. Decades ago, it used to be like 40 to 1 in quote unquote awake countries. Right now, it's abysmal. Now you got these people making hundreds of billions of dollars. So the class disparity that's obscene. That's what's obscene. So plant either 100 to 1 or 1,000 to 1, whatever, start with it. And then over time, adjust that. Because, hey, there's this whole term, you've won capitalism if you become a billionaire, right? So just give yourself, let's give them a special credit card. They can go wherever they want to go. They can do whatever they want. Okay. But let at least release the assets back to the rest of society so it can actually go to the common good. And you can have all your lobster meals, whatever you want, with all your friends. Spend as much as you want. You're still not going to eat up $100 billion in your lifetime, living life large that way. So there's at least two components right there. Okay. Let people live without fear of tomorrow and limit class disparity. That would go a long ways. Wasn't it Buffett himself that said if he taxed billionaires properly, nobody making less than $400,000 would ever have to pay tax? Something like that. And how many people are making $400,000 a year? Okay.
None of us.
And is it consistent 400,000? Because you could make it for 4 years and then make nothing for another 20 years.
Yeah.
So you have to play that situation forward and see how do you prevent it from becoming a Russia or China? Yeah, how do you keep communism at bay in that scenario?
I think consistency is the key because when you're changing the tax laws all the time, it gets confusing. But if you had a consistent tax law for 100 years, then people can work towards knowing if I want to be at this income bracket, I'm taxed at this bracket and I can live with that. That's fine. And it would just help people to get into the parts of society. And I think,
Actually,
what is it? I think it's in Switzerland, the cantons, they have different tax laws for different regions.
mhm.
And I think it's more the tax shouldn't be for the income, it should be for the area that they're living in. If you're living in that area, this is the way it wants to be run. It should be geographical, not economic.
Yeah, well, okay, so you sort of have that with property taxes here, but not exactly. But I'm saying religious organizations have that kind of structure, like it's a percent of adjusted gross income, as that's your
Yeah.
dues. Yeah, but yeah, see, if I think we just you got to play it out, simulate it, and see where it leads. And what's the
Well,
risk? Yeah.
is that what we're going to be doing, Eric? Is playing Civilization with these large language models? Like, are we going to play out all these scenarios
I
until we
think
get one right?
we're going to be asking them to find the best solution. It's an optimization problem. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
here's Sim City, here's Sim Earth. Here, play it out, find a good solution, and we'll do it.
And an
If people,
implementation problem, right?
well, it's a question, are people, I don't know, that if we if the world doesn't kill itself, then we'll see. Then we have some time to work that out.
Well, the first ask I would have is that we create nuclear power without the byproduct of nuclear weapons.
Okay, so how do you prevent Iran from creating nuclear weapons?
You regulate the way that the nuclear power, the byproduct of nuclear power is what creates nuclear weapons.
Right. But look
So
at
if you,
Iran, we actually hacked their centrifuges years ago, and that just boiled over into tensions. So yeah, how do you regulate a rogue state? I mean, see, you're not going to get everyone on Earth to agree. So it's a
well,
management problem.
what if everyone on Earth built each other's nuclear power plants together as a giant cooperation?
If people agree that that's the way forward, unless there's another
It,
source of energy
if
that comes
everyone
up.
agrees, yeah, then we destroy all the nuclear weapons. We dismantle all the nuclear weapons.
Well, I mean, there were treaties that tried that, the SALT II, and but that's all political. Interesting history of how they had to use negotiations to get that done.
I'm not saying it could be done. I'm saying it should be done.
Well, yes, many
Yeah.
people agree it should be done, but the practical aspect is you're dealing with different ideologies and political situations. So the world's going to do its thing no matter what. And you could try for an alternate US or maybe a moon or Mars base. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, just like the British sent everyone to Australia that were criminals, maybe we send all the people that want to play around with nuclear weapons up to Mars. Let them fire their nuclear weapons on Mars. Like if you find someone that's hoarding nuclear weapons, that they got to go to somewhere else to use their nuclear weapons outside of
Say,
this.
send them to Venus. They could handle all the atmosphere.
But I'm just saying it'd be a very high trust world if we had some kind of third party system that made sure that they dismantled the nuclear weapons and everyone on the earth would have to agree. And anyone that didn't agree can't be on earth.
There was a Superman movie where he took all the nukes and threw them into the sun. So unless you
Yeah.
could find a Superman to do that.
Well, we've got rockets that could send it to the sun.
I would try a Boeing rocket. Did those people still stuck up there? Space station.
The Starliner.
I'm just saying, yeah, just as a thought experiment, would you like to live in a world without nuclear weapons, or do you like the world with nuclear weapons?
To me, it doesn't make a difference. It depends on, the people, not so much the weapons.
I mean, it's always been a fear of mine as a kid. Even though I didn't live through duck and cover, but growing up in the 80s, it was on the news all the time. But it was held in check somehow. But I don't think it's held in check anymore. So,
To me,
yeah.
it's a degree of scale, whether you live in fear of nuclear weapons, or you live in fear of AWACS, or if you live in fear of drones, or you live in fear of AR-15s, or you live in fear of Glock 19s, or you live in fear of pea shooters. It's a matter of scale.
Mhm.
So you can pick your line of demarcation, but the real fundamental issue is how do people get along, not what they're using to express their anger.
What do you think of the law?
Propaganda.
If you had a law, Sam, if you take a weapon and you hurt someone, then you have to stay with that person for the rest of their life until they're completely healed. And if that never happens, then you're stuck with that person that you harmed.
I like that idea. I think this whole idea of making right what you did wrong should be payment for the wronging act. And I think that's a healthy way of looking at things. Like if I cause someone to go into, vegetative state, yeah, I would have to take care of that person in a just society.
Yeah.
I would have to make sure that person can, eat, sleep, make music, enjoy life to the best degree possible. That's the price I should have to pay.
And the expensive things should be the weapons that hurt other people. They should cost millions of dollars. Like each bullet should cost $50,000. So if you want to shoot a bullet at someone, that's an expensive shot.
So what we need are story writers to play these scenarios out and see where are the gaps. You're each proposing ideas, but let's write some sci-fi and play out where it goes.
Yep.
Sure.
Uh,
Or ask AI to write some sci-fi. Imagine if this was the law.
In fact,
What would
the next to last comment I wrote, which was minutes ago, was in our quote unquote criminal justice system, are we interested in punishment? Are we interested in rehabilitation? Or are we interested in making right? That question you asked, my response was always focused on this making right notion of justice. What good does punishment do? We have a very simple notion that, oh, if we do this to that person, they're not going to do this again. We've seen
Yeah, I
that
think
that doesn't work.
that's going back thousands of years. Yeah, the origins of all that.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I don't think we expected to have this many people on this planet. I just don't think anyone ever. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember they're saying it's going to reach 4 billion people. That was a lot of people. It was like there's 3.7 billion people on this planet. It's going to reach 4 billion people. That's a lot of people. and now we're doubled that.
But McDonald's served them all, right? Over 8
Yeah.
billion served.
I'm saying I just wish that we would all just celebrate the fact that we doubled the population from 1980. What was it? I think it was 1980 when it was
Hmm,
4 billion. Like that,
okay.
that's an accomplishment in, you know, 44 years. We doubled the population. That's amazing. Like that's incredible that we got this much. And the fact that there's population decline right now, I think we need to decide on what a good amount of people that we can all coexist.
But look at the quality of life since 1980, and the education that's resulted from that. So it's the big divide, the haves and the have-nots. So you double the population, but what kind of population is it now? These 40-year-olds and their kids. What have
Well,
you
are we
actually?
are we grateful for what we have, or are we just constantly bitching about it? That's the way I look at it.
I mean, I see the bitching everywhere. So
Yeah, and I see some people say, you know, it sucks and it could be better, but all in all, I see most people actually pretty happy. They just haven't stopped to realize they're happy. They just think that they're not happy.
they're happy in their little bubbles. Take away their creature comforts, they will not be happy.
Right, but we have a lot of creature comforts now. I see everyone's garage I go to has fitness machines and bicycles and, you know, old cars and, you know, everyone I talk to, at least in America, even the poor people, they got a lot of stuff.
Uh, that's the capitalist system that did all that quantity, right? It put it all out there, whatever people will buy, and that's what people bought.
Mhm.
Sam's doing AI.
What is he
um,
doing? What is it?
he's trying to have AI come up with a solution to the world's problems.
I
No,
think that
No, he just did searches.
AI solution will be to get rid of the Homo sapiens and just be machines.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think it's AI is programmed by our language, and our language is to communicate. And what we're communicating is we don't know if we're happy or not. We don't know if we're filled with so much fear that we're ready to lash out with our reptilian brain, or if we're ready to rise above that and reach a hand out across the aisle and say, hey, you know what? I want to understand what I can do to make your life better so that you can be my neighbor and make my life better. But we're afraid that if we ask that question, we might it's like that famous quote. I think it was the gentleman from South Africa that became the president that stayed in jail. Man,
Nelson Mandela.
yeah,
Nelson
Nelson
Mandela.
Mandela. He had that famous quote that was stolen, but he said, our greatest fear is not that we're insufficient, is that we're more powerful than we could ever imagine.
Marianne Williamson.
Well, she stole that from Nelson Mandela.
That not according to Nelson.
Okay.
Said he got it from her.
Oh, well, I didn't know that. Well, maybe he stole it from her, I guess. But the
And then
point,
she
but
stole
I
it
think,
back.
yeah, I think that whoever said whoever it was, that's a great quote, because I do think our greatest fear is not that we're inadequate, it's that we are powerful. That's a real fear, but we don't want to rise up to say that, because then we have to take responsibility for the power. And that it's easier to not take responsibility and to say, oh, that's the government, they have to do that, or that's those people, or that's, you know, it's easier to just be fearful and say, you protect me. I don't want to do it. You do it. I mean, I'm just noticing that in my daughter. She's only 3 years old and she's trying to put the batteries in her toy and she's trying to click it down, but you got to push it, pull it, and click it. And it's not clicking in her brain. And she's going, you know what? I've seen daddy do this like 20 times. You do it, daddy. It's easy. And I'm trying to teach her, no, you can learn how to do this. And she's like, okay, let me try again. Nah, fuck it. You do it. You do it, daddy. I don't want to do it. And it's that thing is if you give that confidence to someone that they can do it, and then they feel that joy that it comes with knowing, if you're balancing your taxes and you're like, oh shit, I'm constantly losing money, but then you figure out that one little form to check that allows you to get an extra $10,000 in your taxes. Once you figure that out, you feel powerful every time you do your taxes because you figured out the system. And then do you share that with others? That's the real question is once you know where to check that form, do you tell your neighbors and your friends and your family? Or do you just keep that as a way to get over someone because you can make extra money that they can't make because they don't know how to file the right form 10934 and this other form to, are we sharing the knowledge of how to win the game together?
Well, that's what YouTube is doing a lot of. You become very proficient at something and earn a living at it. And then you get tired of it, so you teach others how to do it.
Yeah.
The book was Marianne Williamson's 1989 called A Return to Love.
And when did Nelson Mandela say that quote?
Let's see.
I wonder.
According to
That's it.
this, Nelson Mandela never used this quote in any of his 3 public inauguration speeches, according to the Nelson Mandela Center of Memory. The center has cataloged over 1,000 of his speeches, and there is no record of him using this quote.
Well, I watched Marianne Williamson run for Congress in her district, and I was at her rally in Santa Monica. And one of the things that she said really hit me hard, which is, I'm not angry, I'm not mad, I'm just clear. And I really like that. Like
Yeah.
I don't think she's.
I supported her
Yeah,
campaign.
I supported her for that district in Santa Monica, but not for president.
Mm-hmm.
But I like that there's somebody saying, I want to be a good person and do good things in this world. I have a question to the group. Is it possible that people like ourselves could help create the operating systems that make the world a better place? Is there even possible?
We can write down the blueprint, but we can't implement it. We can publish a blueprint. That's all we can do.
We can't implement it. Why, Barry?
Because we don't have the power to cause everybody else to do our bidding.
But we should not have to have that power.
I don't want that.
The proper operating system, as Josh describes it, should not require authority for it to spread widely.
Except that it hasn't.
Because we haven't gotten the proper collaborative DNA. We haven't hit that magic, code of conduct.
There are too many people who want power the old-fashioned way to compel others to do things their way.
But basically, it's that firm belief of yes to that question that is why I'm here on Sundays, and it's why I'm part of the COI. It's part of why I'm part of PFTF and GCC. That's really the fundamental yes.
Yeah. But it hasn't happened for 12,000 years. So.
Well, it's a hard problem.
It is a hard problem.
And I'm incompetent, but I'm trying.
Yeah. I think when the Buddha came out of his meditation state, he knew that there wasn't going to be many people that would understand what he realized in that meditation state. And then he gave that famous Sermon on the Mount at Deer Park to a very select few people. And that's what spread Buddhism far and wide afterwards. But it wasn't a large group, it was a small group of people. it wasn't a Camelo rally with AI and all those people. It was a I I just think how things spread is by small groups of people living in ways that when other people find out, it's so infectious that that story spreads. Like, can there be a small city of 5,000 people that are, have all their needs met and are thriving?
Well, there were attempts to make little utopian communities, mana colonies, and others like them.
Those were those attempts coming from a place where they didn't want other people to join? Like how, in other words, to me, the whole problem has always come down, even with GCC. How do you allow others to join? What is the inclusion and declusion, if that's even a word, declusion, uh,
Exclusion.
exclusion? Thank you. I knew that I'm saying the wrong word. Thank you, Barry. What is the inclusion and exclusion properties of a system?
Understanding and agreeing to adhere to the social contract. If they don't understand the social contract or don't agree to adhere to it, then they don't qualify for admission.
And what's the education of the social contract before the agreement? And once the agreement is made, how do you back out of the agreement?
It's mentorship. And if you decide that you no longer want to abide by the social contract, then you go off to a different community which doesn't have that social contract.
Yeah. So it's an easy inclusion and an easy exclusion.
Well, I
Meaning you
won't
can,
say easy. You had mentors who inculcated the social contract into candidate citizens, and if they understood it and agreed to abide by it and could discipline themselves, then they became full-fledged citizens after sort of a probationary period. And if not, then their admittance ticket expired.
who votes on the admittance ticket being offered?
You had to have two sponsors who also acted as mentors, and the two sponsors both said, we take responsibility for assuring the community that this person's ready to join. And
Hmm.
if they faltered, it was up to the sponsors and mentors to straighten them out. And if they couldn't, then the story was they didn't pass muster.
Where was this? What are you citing?
This is how we did it in communities like Micromuse and similar ones, which were social contract online learning communities.
And Sam has that COI, community of impact, with two people, like a three-person triad, where all three people are responsible for each other.
Like,
That's in the Star Wars fictional movie. That's the Jedi code, is you have to take on the responsibility of your Padawan.
yeah. So it works in small communities. It doesn't scale. I'm not sure what the Dunbar number is, but it's probably close to the Dunbar number of how big it can grow before it becomes unmanageable, becomes inherently corrupt from the inside out.
Yeah.
But there have been demonstration communities of that sort. They just didn't scale.
So if you could find the number that it scales to and you cap it off at that, can you have a representative from that community talk to the other? Like,
I mean, the Debian community, which is a very limited scope, that's basically writing Unix code. The Debian community is a social contract community, and at one time, um, the employees of Google were a social contract community.
hmm.
Debian, I think, still is. Google isn't anymore. Debian may be the biggest social contract community that's functional, but it has a very limited set of activities. It doesn't try to run the world. It just tries to write code for Linux.
Yeah. the biggest success I've ever seen in my life is these small communities that reach a certain level and they just stay at that level. They don't ever grow or decline. They just sort of,
Yeah. Tribes basically didn't get very big. And they were
yeah,
regional too. They didn't spread very far geographically. But the non-living nodes on the internet, they basically are operating according to a set of agreed upon protocols, and they're designed to adhere to those protocols.
yeah.
Yeah. If one of them departs from the protocols, the others just stop talking to it.
And in human systems, this is limited by how far respect and trust reaches, or familiarity, those three elements.
Yeah.
That's where
It's
you have
also a
the
pretty
basic.
high bar. I mean, most people are not competent to contribute to the Debian community because they don't have the coding skills.
You don't need coding skills to contribute to such a society. You can actually write documentation, you can create tutorials.
Yeah, but you have to understand the code to write the documentation. If you're not literate in code, you're kind of out to lunch.
I mean, you could say that Google is no longer, but they had that initial set of values of which they made a big deal about the most famous one,
Yeah,
and then decades later retracted it.
yeah, well,
So,
once they became very, very large and had very powerful people at the top, then they migrated away from the small community model.
but you can't. I don't think they got rid of their values entirely. Just like Amazon has their what 12 or 14 principles that they really pound into every employee.
Once they get into monetizing as the overarching goal instead of contributing to society, then you basically go over the top of the hill and go onto the downside towards being evil instead of not being evil.
And in a capitalist society, it's almost inevitable, right? Because the search engine all by itself doing searches was not profitable for Google. It wasn't profitable until they started, selling advertising.
Yeah.
I think they bought a company to do that. If
To
I'm
some extent, Kickstarter has allowed small entrepreneurs to succeed outside of capitalism because Kickstarter is sort of a different model, but it's not the dominant model. It's a model for very small entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I
in
was in the
small
coffee
communities.
shop with the guys that started Kickstarter.
Yeah. But like Cyan Worlds, they use Kickstarter, among others. Small indie houses.
I'm just trying to think of what's keeping us from moving forward in terms of creating newer models and allowing them to succeed. And it is capitalism.
It's the
It's
shortfall of model-based reasoning is not widely adopted in the population at large. There's kind of an elite who are competent at model-based reasoning, and you need more people who are plugged into model-based reasoning before you can have models that can um, emerge and supplant the old methods, the old systems.
yeah. I think it's the timeline of education. Once those models are working, how to bring more people into the fray, into those communities like you're talking about.
Yeah, it's how to make
It's
education accessible and pleasurable enough that people will spend their time to learn. And the gaming
and
community is one technique for getting people to learn things that by making it fun, but it's not the only way, and it's not sufficient for all ways.
and education should be lucrative as well. It should increase your standard of living,
Yeah.
not decrease it. Because a lot of
Oh,
people I know that get educated, their standard of living goes down, not up, because they know something not to do the thing that they would have done if they didn't know. Like it's
and
the
they gain wisdom to know that yes, you
right.
can make bombs, but it's not a smart thing to do to earn a living, to be a warlord or an arms dealer. I mean,
I think it's oh, go
that's
ahead.
the story of Alfred Nobel. He invented dynamite, then
Yeah.
came to regret it and put his money into an award for science, Nobel Prize.
I don't think he regretted it. I just didn't think he had a support system of family around him to share that with.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Sam can look up the history of how Nobel had his change of heart after inventing dynamite.
I don't think he had the change of heart. I think it was the people that he left the money to. And yeah, I guess I think
Sure.
wisdom sharing is how is wisdom shared throughout the world in different
Through
societies?
stories, basically through stories. And of course, storycraft now is high tech. It's movies and synthetic cinema.
And through institutional stories
Yeah, I
like
mean,
the
traditionally the stories were basically the lore, the cultural lore. I mean, this you go back to Gilgamesh and the Greek myths and all those sort of stories. You know, that's how you define a culture is through the storycraft.
Mhm. When you start a company, the story of what the company is based off of, that'll get you, the first 5 to 6 years in a company. But after that, the story is not the story anymore. It's the people that believe in the story that become the story.
Yeah, I mean, you read the back of the package label or the back of the menu, and there's a little origin story of the company, whether it's a
Yeah.
restaurant or a food manufacturer or whatever. And it's a very touching story, but then eventually it outgrows the story.
Yeah. Well, the product has to keep up with the story.
Yeah, and a lot of products eventually age out.
Hmm. So stories need to die.
Well, they do die, whether they need to or not. They do die, and some are longer lived than others. Some die more rapidly than others, but
In my lifetime, I thought that the Disney story would die because of its, statute of limitations on the patents of the characters, and they would go into the public domain and they would just die. But they somehow fought to keep that going. It just continues.
yeah, I don't know the story about copyright of comic book characters, but Mickey Mouse and those, I think the Disney characters, I don't really know the story whether the Disney characters are still under copyright or exactly how that works anymore.
Yeah, that's a story for another day, I think.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that's basically legal code, and it varies from one country to the next. So I think if you live overseas, you probably aren't bound by American law, copyright law.
well, that's the brilliance of Disney is they move their empire overseas. They
Yeah,
put a Disney France and a Disney Japan, and
yeah,
yeah, they did it. I mean, to me, the biggest corporations like the Disneys or the Coca-Colas, they built a distribution network that was so far and wide that it was hard to destroy.
yeah,
And that's what I see us doing now is we're rebuilding these networks like the way that 3G and 4G was created it's a whole nother network that was put up on top of the networks that we already had in America, but in other countries. And then, yeah, the big network in space. I just saw the Starlink satellites being launched over my house the other night, and they have. I think I just looked it up. I'm trying to remember the numbers off the top of my head, but it's somewhere around 6,000, and they're looking to get to 64,000 satellites. And that's a big network in space,
Yeah.
which to me is volatile because, some solar flares could really take that network down quick.
Yeah, it's hard to anticipate the life cycle of that. Those 6,000, however many, are going to eventually age out, and then they start to fall back down again. I don't know what that's going to be like. But
Well,
it'll
they've already, yeah,
sweep them
they
up
burn
somehow.
out. Well, they burn out, but if you're putting up more that are falling down, you're building quite the network. Like he's already at, or I should say she, because it's Glenn Shotwell that's running that game. She's at, you know, third generation of the satellite dish. We just got the Starlink Mini. It's either third or fourth generation, and I think the later generations will be handheld devices that connect directly.
So yeah, I think communication technology is not has not maxed out yet. It's still on the up
Yeah.
cycle of the curve. But eventually communication technology will probably max out.
How so? What do you see it maxing out as?
Well, I mean, who's going to how much information can you consume per minute? You know, uh,
Well, it's not going to be us consuming it. It's going to be the humanoid robots consuming it.
well, yeah, but then that's a just whole different kind of thing. So,
That's what the stock market is predicated on right now. Nvidia has just got back up to 3 billion. I mean, sorry, did I say billion? I meant trillion.
is that their capitalization,
They
2 trillion?
they were at two, and then they went up to three, and then the Japanese market fell down, and then it went down, and now it's back up over three.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that market cap for Nvidia, that's just one chip company. If we allow for competition and have 80 or 90 or 1,000 chip companies,
But
that's going to
yes,
be,
yeah.
yeah.
So I think information, communication, and energy are still going to be on the upswing, probably for most of this century.
I
And it's
think for the
hard.
rest of the century, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to predict, beyond 10 years. You can say damn near anything you want to say after 10 years.
Where I don't see them stopping drilling for the next 50 years.
Well, there's still uses for pharmaceuticals that are made out of hydrocarbon or carbon. What's what I'm looking for? Carbon-based
Yeah.
carbon chemistry.
Yeah. I just watched
Protein.
a deep dive on the Lego company and how they made their little Legos and made a system that interconnected with everything. And it started to falter in the 90s, but then they realized that adults like Legos too. So they didn't have to just sell to kids.
Yeah, there are hobbyists who make very, very complex Lego structures that can do
Yeah.
pretty complicated things.
Well, for me personally, it seems simple, but it was a big revelation for me yesterday as I took an old piece of wood and I took a sander and I sanded it. And the joy of taking an old piece of wood and turning it into this beautiful grain and sanding it off and just working with wood itself, which is a resource that we have on this planet. It's just such a fun thing to do. I don't know. That's just something that I've always loved is working
I,
with
I've,
wood.
I've been watching the last few days some YouTube videos of people who take old scrap lumber, like um, those old pallet boards and whatnot, and they make the most amazing things out of them with hours and hours and hours of artistic woodworking, and then they film it and compress the whole thing down to about an hour long.
Yeah.
Show and tell of making things out of junk wood.
That's my plan for the rest of my life, is just to make cabinetry and inside of structures, just wooded things with wood, plastic, and magnets, and a little bit
And
of metal.
metal, yeah. Yeah, there's people are making pretty complicated puzzle boxes out of laser cut wood. So they make all these pieces and fit them together into some kind of a puzzle box structure where there's a whole bunch of sequential steps to discover to open it up. And there's a couple of channels where people, display these and solve them on camera.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hemp being grown in America and being able to get hempcrete and hemp-based products that are, you take the hemp and you compact it together. So it's like making your own pulp. So creating your own wood, that's like, think of 3D printed wood.
Yeah. Synthetic cellulose or something like that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Although to
Yeah,
some extent, plastic was sort of a substitute because, beautiful wood is expensive and people used to make wood cabinets for appliances, and then they switched to sheet metal and plastic uh, housing because it was cheaper.
yeah. Well, the interlocking pieces, where things connect can be plastic because that can be replaced.
Yeah.
But I think a hybrid of materials that you can maintain yourself. So you can upkeep
Yeah,
it for,
yeah. I think there'll be an upsurge in repairable stuff because we have this throwaway economy, which is problematic. And we need to sort of make things go back to sort of a maintainable, repairable technology.
well, have you seen that upsurge? Have you seen that revolution going on? Because it's, to me, it's very prevalent because I know a lot of makers in the maker space, and I just see, the bamboo printer is very popular right now, the 3D printer,
Yeah.
and the wood shop tools in just the last 10 years. Because of the fire, I had to replace all my tools. And the new tools I have are leaps and bounds above the old tools. They're
Yeah.
just
But being
amazing.
able to fabricate parts, I mean, the real problem with repair is getting when a part wears out or breaks. If the replacement parts are unavailable or very expensive, then it's not cost effective to repair it. But maybe if you can fabricate parts, um, on demand and keep things going, replace the wearing out parts.
Yeah.
But also for example, VCRs. I mean, VCRs wear out, and you can repair them, but nobody wants VCRs anymore because the videotape technology is obsolescent.
Do you see a time, Barry, in the near future where we can print our own electronics?
Maybe I don't know about. I mean that stuff is, I mean, like making chips and things. I mean, maybe printed circuit, assembling printed circuit boards I could see, although flow soldering is pretty challenging. But maybe
You could
at the
just
hobbyist level, yeah.
you could design it all in an electronics program, even the case, and send it off to China, and they'll build it for you. Yep.
Yeah.
Something related to what Sam and I were thinking about. So this is a USB to game port adapter, and for the Engelbart cord key set. This is how I'm using. This is how I get into a Raspberry Pi through USB. But if we could reverse engineer this and get it made cheaply and build a simple core 5 key set that instead of a joystick, the old joystick DB19, you just use USB. And if you know the circuit in here, this is a Radio Shack product.
Does that
And
have a chip inside of it?
I think it does. It has a switch, like if you have a joypad or joysticks or a wheel. So
Probably
How
got a
many,
chip inside of it.
how many
and that
pins are in that?
well, it's a DB19 joystick
19?
connector, like the old sound cards that had the
Hmm.
joystick port. And that is what they used in the org term. So it's not RS-232. They actually hooked up the old chord key sets. They figured out the circuit and they got it through here to what they were using, the Windows or Mac at the time for their org term demos. So they were able to practice. But, you know, I'm not sure. This is like just for fun. I'm not sure if there's any interest in that beyond us. So,
Yeah, hobbyist stuff,
yeah,
small market hobbyist stuff.
right.
I saw a guy taking apart an electric meter and tried to redo the BIOS system inside the electric meter. And then
Was
he
that the
was,
smart meter hacker on
yeah.
YouTube?
Have you seen
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I saw
Yeah.
that. Hmm.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, he's pretty cool. But yeah, he has the knowledge and the resources to do that. Most people don't. But he was
Right.
tracing, yeah, it was software defined radio showing it hopping around the band. It's crazy what the way these things work.
There are
Yeah. Well,
websites you can go to for software-defined radio. It just runs
Oh
into
yeah.
that. You
Yeah,
know?
I've used that to listen to stations. Yep. But
yeah.
he's saying these smart meters, they're changing frequency every second or two, or maybe more than
Frequency
140 times.
hopping,
Yeah, they're
frequency hopping.
hopping around the frequencies and somehow they're communicating your data out to the mesh network.
Yeah, it is. I just noticed my mother-in-law put solar panels on the roof. And when I looked at the setup, they're selling her power without her knowing back to the grid. And it's the contract that she signed. And I want to tell her that she's getting ripped off, but I don't know how to explain it to her. And she's
Does her
already
bill go
locked into
down?
the contract. What's that?
Oh, her bill doesn't go down because she's providing power.
Not to the extent it should.
Okay. Yep.
I can
Oh, they
see
give you a
she's
little
getting ripped
bit.
off. Yeah, they give
Okay.
you a little bit. There's this whole new grid setup that they're doing, ripping people off and getting them to pay. They're using their roof to get their power. There's these power companies that are, you know, people don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting, but it's also, times that forward and how we set up the new grid system, these microgrids. That's why I kind of want to move to Texas just because it's like the Wild West out there with energy companies. But that's going to be, I think the biggest thing in the future is going to be how we share electricity as a community,
Mhm.
because it is going to get scarce. We are going to hit that point where electricity bills are going to go through the roof.
Now, could we have cows fart on a wheel and make electricity from that? So, and keep it in a balloon so your cows.
You could. They actually have. It's funny you say that because they have compost systems now
Right.
where the gas from the compost you can use to run a stove.
Nice.
So it's not at scale, it's small, but I'm
Hmm.
saying to me the energy situation is the most important thing to solve in terms of when cities fail, when you can't get gas out of your gas line and you can't get water and you can't get electricity. That is going to be the infrastructure problem when people say, you know what, I'm going to move to a place where you can, and then they're just going to overload that system. And then it's just going to be, that's what I see already happening now. People overloading.
Cascading failure.
Exactly.
Or you have to
Cascading
get
failure.
on a bicycle every morning to generate your power.
Well, I'm in California, so if you can see
Yep.
behind me, there's the power. And,
Yep.
and my little backyard setup is so simple. Right behind me is a solar panel. This
Hmm.
battery, I'm going to check it, is at 97%.
Hmm.
But if it goes low, I just put it right here, plug it in, and now I have power. And this will last me another 5 years. This
Hmm.
little, and I got it used at Harbor Freight for $200,
Yep.
and it's
And
just a giant lithium battery, and it's got DC and AC.
right. And how many amp hours does that hold?
Um, what is amp hours? I'm trying to think. All I know is to charge it. I only use it for iPads and iPhones,
Right.
and it will last me a week.
Oh, well,
Okay.
they don't draw any power to speak of.
Yeah, but I if I charge it up every day, it's unlimited for my usage of my electronics out here.
Yeah. Okay. So a charge will last, and that's good. So, yep.
Yep. So even in the winter time when the sun is low and I'm getting almost no power, it will just sustain me enough to
Hmm.
charge up my iPhone and iPad.
So is that like a marine battery, or is it a specific?
It's I believe it's lithium ion battery. It's let me look at the
Yeah, because I was so like you want something that's
yeah,
used
lithium
in
ion.
mar
It's
something.
25.5 amp hours
Okay.
and it gives
What
out
volt?
500 21.6 volts and 550 watt hours.
Okay.
Yeah,
Half
that's
1 hour.
reasonable.
Yeah.
But this is just, I mean, this now you can get it for $100.
Hmm. That's
So
cool.
I'm saying, yeah. So I'm saying the costs have come down so much to the point where it does make sense to invest because the batteries supposedly have a 10-year life cycle
Hmm.
and over, I think it's 2,000 charges up and down.
Hmm.
So that's why I bought the Tesla car because I figured even if society went to shit, I could tear out those batteries and use those for at least another 15 years, which to me that those batteries alone are worth 20 grand.
Hmm.
So if the whole car fails, I'm going to use it for, I'll gut the car, live inside of the car, pull out all the wires, use the wires for something else, but it's a worth it investment just for the resources of I mean, there's a
Yeah.
motherboard in there.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
good
it's
reasoning. Yeah.
yeah, I mean it makes sense if you're an off-gridder like me and a homesteader, it
Hmm.
makes sense because I imagine at some point I'll be up on the mountain. Something will happen in society where I can't get down for a while, and I'll need to use those batteries to power the pump for the water.
Hmm.
That's what I'll use it for. I'll take the solar panels I have and connect it to that with a inverter and pump the
Yep.
water up the hill, and I'll grow enough food to just survive.
So you're gonna write a book or blog about everything you're doing, or
No, no,
no, you don't
it's
want anyone to know your secrets, right?
no, no, no. I do want people to know the secret. It's just the time at the end of the day when you're homesteading, the last thing you want to do is open a camera and go on a computer and try to blog.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
right now, at this moment in time, we just had a huge fire go through, and all my stepdad is doing is going through the woods, chopping the old trees down, and making a fire break around the whole property. And that's going to take
Okay.
2 years
Wow.
for just me and him to do the whole, a line around the entire property because we're talking
Hmm.
70 acres.
Wow.
So that's for two people with three chainsaws. That's 2 years worth of work, and that's
Hmm.
working basically 20 to 30 hours a week
Hmm.
each. So that's 60 hours for both of us.
And then
But
what do you do with all the wood?
we burn it and then we put it into ash and then we use that ash in the composting toilets.
Okay, good.
And so we did get a wood chipper and it's just inefficient. It's just the
Hmm.
amount of gas that it takes to run it and the hydraulics.
Yeah.
It's not the juice was not worth this. We tried it, not worth the squeeze. It's better
That's
to
good.
just bury. You can also bury the logs in place.
Hmm.
So if you take the backhoe and pull up some of the dirt, put the log into the dirt, then it just naturally composts, and then
Hmm.
you can use that compost to grow in other parts of the property. So it's the reality of that kind of work is it just takes a lot of time, and nature usually destroys the work you did. By the time you're done doing all of that, a new thing has grown up on the other side of the property like bushes and trees and plants that you have to maintain. So it's just never ending.
Hmm.
But if you can get to me, the one thing I learned from doing that is the water pipe that we put in, I think it was 9 years ago now, maybe it's 10. is still running, and we're still pumping water up the hill because we put a 14-inch water pipe into the ground that did not, when the fire went through, it did not melt those pipes.
Mhm.
So, so to me, it's just putting as many water pipes as you can and as much power from the sun as you can to push the water around to the top of the hill, and then use gravity for the rest. And gravity is not as easy to maintain as when you're using water pressure through electricity, because
Mm.
you've got to, you've got to set those pipes wide enough for where you put the water from gravity, and then change from each place. It's really it's a difficult problem to solve with slope and pressure, and you know it's a lot of thinking. It's a lot of making sure you sealed the pipes properly, because a lot of them burst.
Mm.
We have a lot of water pipes that just, you think it's good, but then the cold drops down to a temperature where
Yep.
you thought you were below the frost line, but it burst the pipe. It froze. So it's yeah, it's a whole to me, it's a systems thinking of the infrastructure has to be in place, and then if you can get the maintenance lower, like we got it to the point where we at first we were maintaining everything because we had to turn the valves ourselves by hand, and then we started learning, oh, for $10 you could buy a little thing that floats up and turns the valve off,
Nice.
and that's so simple, but we didn't have that.
Mhm.
And if you forget to empty the tank, it freezes. So but if I had unlimited money, I would make it all mechanical with electrical systems and all of that sort of thing. Which, even if I did do that, you get a day without power for a couple of days, and it'll all fail. So yeah, I have a lot of respect for people that put in infrastructure in cities.
Mhm.
I don't think a lot of people realize that when they flush their toilet, it's going somewhere. I think, to me, that's one of the biggest problems I think in the world, is that we have such a great system that we forget that someone had to build that infrastructure. We don't give the respect to the people that built it.
Yeah. Actually, didn't Bill Gates a while ago do a project trying to find better toilets for Africa? I think
That's
he
vaporware.
engaged. Okay, I don't know. I thought he did a project.
He
To,
did.
and what
It's
happened? It was garbage.
it's it,
Didn't
what
go
happens
anywhere.
in what I found from my dad has a non-for-profit that helps people in third world countries, and what
Hmm.
he told me is that he'll put in the best infrastructure, come back 5 years later, and it's all broken and no one's using it.
Hmm.
And he says, "Why aren't you guys maintaining this?" And they go, "Oh, but I did not put it there. You put it there. I did not put it there." Like, that's your thing. I didn't. And that's what I see happening with a lot of these companies, is they'll put this great infrastructure up, but they don't teach the people.
Okay.
They didn't put it up. Some group came in from the village next door and put it up, but
Uh, you need ownership. Yeah.
there's no ownership.
Uh-huh.
So once it breaks, they'll call up the group next door and they're like, "Hey, we don't talk to that non-for-profit anymore, so we're not maintaining it for you. We're not getting paid for that." And that's especially with
Human.
fancy toilets.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. As far as power goes, I don't think we have enough power without nuclear. I don't see how we're going to get through this mess without having nuclear power. And I think Japan knows that. I think France knows that. I think America knows that. I just think the population is so scared of nuclear power that that's the biggest problem, is to get everyone to believe that it's safe.
Any progress on cold fusion?
I've heard things
Sabine.
out of Japan.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they have the JTA60 advanced cold fusion reactor, but I don't know.
Who knows?
I think distribution is the problem. I think, like, the Nord Stream pipeline,
Hmm.
like getting the energy to the people without it being disrupted is the hard part.
Mm.
We can make all the energy in the world, but it's like I can make a giant, huge energy system on my property. Can I run the lines to the other side of the property? And at what voltage do I need to amp it up to in order to run it there? And do I have the money for the transformers? No, I don't. So that side, it has no power. This side has power.
Mm.
And that's what I've noticed.
Yeah, transformers are a big issue with infrastructure.
Yeah, and your budget, it's like I don't have unlimited resources. So if I'm gonna allocate $6,000 to a system, that's a lot of money.
Mhm.
I'd love to put in a $50,000 system, but I have to wait till I can afford that. And I don't want to buy it on credit because then that doesn't make sense. Now I'm beholden to the bank for 30% interest rates. Because they start off at 0%, but if you don't
Mhm.
pay it off in a year or two, it'll balloon up. And I know the tractor is going to break in between that. And I have to, do I pay the tractor or do I pay the bank? I'm going to pay for the tractor. So those are the real problems I think people are having is allocating resources over periods of time.
So these are smart people problems for Sam's list.
I think they're interest rate loaning problems. Like, didn't we just have 2 to 3% interest rate in 2020?
It was down there.
2022.
2022. So that's going to be a problem.
Well, I think the Fed's going to have to cut again.
Do you guys think they have the system engineered to where they can keep manipulating it in any direction they want to build any economy they want?
I believe it's being manipulated. I don't know if they have it under control in any way. They could do what they want. I mean that we're talking quadrillions of dollars that flow around here.
That's what I'm saying is can't they just boost it up to 5 times the GDP?
It's the laws of economics. They want to prevent hyperinflation, but keep the confidence in the markets. It's a tough one. And yeah, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't even know.
Yeah. It's a real balancing act. Economies of scale are hard to balance.
Yeah, any scaling problem is it's a whole different animal, like Engelbart taught us.
Yeah.
We made it to 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
We have no answers. Right? Keep going the same way we've been going.
I don't even know what
Well,
questions to ask.
Yeah, right.
I have an answer. I like your hobbyist stuff. I think we should just focus in on the hobbies, and sometimes the hobbies turn into awesome things. I like the idea of just playing around and then finding those eureka moments where, hey, look what we just created. This is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I could play Barry's Mud with my 5 fingers. And, yeah. And then who knows what that'll lead to, a whole new way of envisioning the future, right?
I don't think we should look at it that way. I think it just lead to happiness.
Yep. Exploring Siberian City 2.
I just think in a world full of fear and destruction and sadness, if there's not some beacons of light of happiness, where are people gonna, they're looking out into the abyss. If they can see a little bit of light over there, at least those people that want to journey towards the light will be attracted to that. And then that would double our community.
And the people who buy the Dalai Lama's book, they won't be happy. Just find it yourself.
I don't know. I met the Dalai Lama.
Yeah,
He seemed pretty happy.
cool.
Yeah, he did just won the Nobel Peace Prize. He was riding
Nice.
high. He was a happy dude. He
Hmm.
escaped. I think he was really happy because he escaped the persecution of the Chinese.
Yep.
He found a little spot in India that they gave him sanctuary, and he was bringing over a lot of children from Tibet over to this little village. And I played basketball with all those little kids, and they were pretty
Oh,
happy.
oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, they were playing in flip flops,
Hmm.
and they were running fast too. I was like, "How are you
I
running
bet
that fast?" I had Nikes on, and they were in flip flops. They were moving
you.
pretty. I just remember running down the court and hearing behind me flip flop, flip flop, flip flop, flip flop, and I'm like, "Oh, he's gonna block my shot."
So send your kids to Tibet to grow up. No.
Not Tibet, no.
No. Okay.
Not India, not Tibet.
No, nope.
Nope. I'm taking a trip to Costa Rica. Actually, we're looking into if you guys know of any good spots in Costa Rica, let me know. I just want Aya to see all the wildlife out there. I think that
That's
would be a
cool.
good vacation.
Yep.
And they seem to have good attitudes for tourism, and they've been doing it for so long. They seem to know what they're doing, as opposed to Mexico.
Hmm.
My daughter Amy at one point wanted to go and intern or work for a few weeks at a sloth sanctuary in Costa Rica.
Oh, cool. Do you know where it was, Sam?
It's probably easy to find. This is years ago because she's now graduated college, but this is when she was thinking about entering college. So this is at least, I don't know, 10 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, I know my brother lived in Costa Rica, and he said every couple months there'd be a migration of different animals or insects. Like the iguanas would come through and the birds would come through, and that little peninsula, they just migrate up and down, and they just get overrun with like ridiculous amounts of little creatures.
But I haven't heard of very many sloth sanctuaries, so the only ones I know of are in Costa Rica.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's right near Panama, so I'm sure there's lots of sloths over there. Yeah, I really don't think we have all the problems we think we have. I just think we haven't explored the diversity of not just the animal life, but the cultural life of the human animals on this planet, and how amazing some people live. Like I've been in rooms with all these Muslim people, and they're talking about how cool it would be to be atheist, but they can't because they're Muslim. But they kind of want to be an atheist because they're very logical, and it's all engineers. It's all really interesting people that are, trying to engineer God through the scriptures, and just really neat communities of people where, they're all arguing with each other. And then the minute you say Hamsalah or like Inshallah or like something referencing God, Allah, then you're immediately trusted because you believe in Allah. And there's a real power to the Muslim religion of unification. They unified the whole Middle East at one point because people were fighting each other. And the minute they said, "What is your God?" and you went, "Allah." Oh, Allah. Okay, come in, have some dates, hang out. I think we need those cheat codes in society where if we say the one thing that unifies, like you like Trump, you like Kamala, but we all like burritos. Like, you want a burrito? Like, I don't know any Republican or any Democrat that would turn down a delicious burrito. Even if they're vegan, you don't have to have any meat in it. Like, burritos everyone likes burritos. I don't know anyone that doesn't like burritos.
So there you go. Take a burrito stand to the DNC, sell it.
Make them, you could have the,
Funny.
the yeah, the black beans and rice on the other side. Okay, this is getting a little racist. Um, yeah, but there has to be a cheat code where you can say something that unifies. If we could shelf that for another conversation. If you guys know of a cheat code in your life that if you say it to anybody, like for me, my cheat code is hip hop music. No matter where I go in the world, if I say I do hip hop, there's always someone that goes, "Oh, my son loves hip hop. Wait, come here, hold on." And they bring their son over, their daughter, and it's just a cheat code. Like, music is my cheat code.
Yeah, like Paul Simon did his Graceland album when he was visiting all these countries around the world and brought them all
Mm-hmm.
together on one album. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no matter what people's belief system, if you break out a guitar and start playing, it'll definitely unite a good amount of people in that group,
Mhm.
more than 50%.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm complete. Thank you guys. I don't have anything else.
Yep, thank you.
Ta-ta then.
Good
Uh,
afternoon, everybody.
yep, I'll keep in touch, Sam, and I'll talk to Qcella, and then we'll try to set up a meeting.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You got it. Cheers.